border management community and stakeholders, members of the media, and fellow South Africans. For me, there are two defining features of the Border Management Authority's performance during the 2025-26 festive season. The first one is that we have started to see encouraging signs that deterrence is starting to work. During this past festive season, there has been a marked decrease in the number of attempted illegal border crossings. This is a greatly encouraging sign because it means that increasingly people who in the past would have crossed into our country illegally are being dissuaded from even trying to do so. They say that prevention is better than cure, and this past festive season, I think we have started to see signs of prevention. This is a function of the visible progress that is being made by the BMA and its partners in the border law enforcement area, as well as of our dedicated focus on deterrence through constant communication. During the period between the 10th of December 2025 and the 15th of January 2026, a total of 25,080 individuals were intercepted. Of these, 22,153 were undocumented persons with no valid travel or identification documents. A further 2,324 individuals were detected for overstaying, while 603 were found to be inadmissible due to invalid passports, fraudulent visas, or failure to comply with health requirements. BMA border guards participated in 531 joint law enforcement operations, which consisted of roadblocks and vehicle checking points. They further conducted 10,455 vehicle and foot patrols and raided about 8,282 hotspot areas within the border law enforcement area. The decrease in attempted illegal crossings can be attributed to a number of operational improvements by the BMA and its partners. Firstly, following the introduction of AI-powered drone technology during last year's festive season as part of our focus on digital transformation, we have now in this past season seen the continued positive impact of this improved surveillance capacity. For the first time, the BMA is now able to conduct surveillance on vulnerable segments of the borderline day and night. Secondly, a dedicated focus on cracking down on those who facilitate illegal crossings means that we have seen a growing number of arrests and prosecutions of these kingpins, while the BMA's communications campaigns have spread the word that the days of a free-for-all at the border are over. In other words, targeting the head of these often organized attempts to bring people into our country illegally. Thirdly, partnerships continue to play a key role in the BMA's progress. I want to cite a powerful example from the recent engagements between the BMA and the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency. After the BMA engaged with this organization and resolved that bus drivers who transport undocumented people across the border will be arrested themselves and that the buses will be confiscated, we have seen a dramatic decline in such incidents. This example demonstrates the power of partnerships, but crucially where all of us as South Africans take responsibility to combat illegal movement across our borders. Another important example comes from cooperation with the South African National Defence Force and with the private sector. Through this collaboration, boats, DCD-protected mobility vehicles, and a Sherp all-terrain vehicle were deployed on and around the Limpopo River during the festive season, which further enhanced visibility and deterrence. Additionally, the devastating floods that our northern regions experienced also meant that rivers were swollen and more difficult to cross. I wish to thank the Cross-Border Roads Association, the SANDF, as well as the South African Police Service, the South African Revenue Service, intelligence structures, the Road Traffic Management Corporation, colleagues at Home Affairs' Immigration Inspectorate, as well as traffic authorities for their continued partnership and contribution to the progress of these deterrence efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, the second feature that stands out from this past festive season has been the marked increase in lawful travel and tourism. The BMA plays a critical and often overlooked role in economic growth by facilitating such travel as well as cargo transport. As the Minister of Tourism recently announced, South Africa set a new record of 10.48 million tourist arrivals during 2025, and the BMA has been central to smoothly facilitating this record number of visitors to our country, including, of course, during the festive period. This was reflected in the fact that the BMA successfully managed the movement of 4,902,269 lawful travellers across 71 ports of entry during the festive period. This included the processing of 340,876 private vehicles, 9,072 minibus taxis, 10,349 buses, and 145,113 trucks for import and export. In addition, 7,787 aircraft and 243 vessels were processed. The contribution of the BMA and the broader Home Affairs ecosystem to driving economic growth and job creation through things like tourism is set to increase dramatically during the coming year as a result of the electronic travel authorization rollout, which is one of our flagship digital reforms. This system, which is securely linked to a traveller's facial biometric and uses machine learning to instantly adjudicate tourist visa applications, went live for the G20 Leaders Summit. The BMA and partners are currently rolling out upgrades to the electronic movement control system. That's where you scan your passport when you enter or exit the country. We are bringing facial recognition into that process to enhance security and to ensure that that upgraded EMCS is activated at all international airports and at busy land borders, whereafter we will make an announcement on the scale-up of the ETA. But let there be no doubt about it. The ETA is going to supercharge tourism job creation from major but largely untapped markets like India, China, and Indonesia at a scale we have not seen before. I want to particularly commend the BMA for remaining focused on implementing these digital reforms, even during the height of the busy travel season. Thank you, colleagues. Turning to individual ports of entry, 84% of travelers during this period were facilitated at the top 10 busiest ports of entry, with OR Tambo International leading the way, followed by Lubombo and Beitbridge. Lubombo alone recorded an increase of 184,398 travelers compared to the previous year. It is therefore important to note that 6 out of the 10 busiest land ports, namely Lubombo, Beitbridge, Oshoek, Kopfontein, Maseru Bridge, and Vicksburg, are set to be completely redeveloped through a major public-private partnership. I look forward to the BMA, National Treasury, and other stakeholders concluding the preparatory work within the next few weeks ahead of the selected bidders being announced. But I want to say to you that this is set to be a catalytic infrastructure project for our country that will massively enhance both border security and regional trade. Ladies and gentlemen, on the one hand, a decrease in the number of people trying to enter our country illegally. On the other hand, a meaningful increase in the number of lawful tourists and other travelers. That is the combination that we want to see going forward. We want to see a growing number of people coming to this country lawfully to spend their money and help us create jobs in the tourism sector and other areas. And we want to see the numbers of people even daring to try and enter South Africa illegally decreasing. That is the track that we are now on. But while this progress is significant, both in terms of deterring those attempted illegal crossings and facilitating lawful travel, the task of building a modern, efficient, and secure border management system remains ongoing. Continued investment in personnel, infrastructure, and technology will be essential if the BMA is to fully realize its mandate. Critically, the chronic underfunding of the BMA must be addressed, as this organization has conclusively demonstrated the necessary commitment to address long-standing challenges in this area. Additionally, any investment in the BMA ultimately pays for itself by reducing the impact of illicit trade and illegal immigration and enhancing revenue collection. We've recently seen the impact of illicit trade on our economy with the closures of businesses. The solution to that problem is the people in this room. If we fund and capacitate the BMA properly and crack down on illicit smuggling at our borders by even 10 or 20%, we are going to see a direct correlation with increased economic growth and increased tax collection. It is a no-brainer and an investment that will stand our country in good stead, and we will continue to advocate for that approach. I wish to commend all BMA officials and partner agencies for their professionalism, resilience and dedication under demanding conditions during the 2025-26 festive season. Our collective efforts demonstrate the value of a coordinated whole-of-government approach to border management and reinforces the importance of sustained collaboration in securing South Africa's borders. The progress we are now seeing also shows the power of digital transformation to fundamentally improve all aspects of the BMA's work. This includes both enhancing security and contributing to economic growth and job creation through lawful migration and trade. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, an increase in lawful travel that helps us grow the economy, a decrease in people trying to enter South Africa illegally. That is what we are starting to see, and that is what we want to see much more of as we move into the future together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, for sharing those overview in terms of what we have been doing on the ground, this festive season operation, as well as for sharing with us some of the projects that we are going to implement, the issue of the facial recognitions that we are going to build into the systems, as well as the impact that we obviously want to make if all these things that we're talking about are realized. Without any waste of time, let us allow, obviously, the Commissioner to come to the podium and address us and focusing on the technical details of the festive season operation. Commissioner.
Good morning, colleagues. Let me start by appreciating the Program Director, Dr. Luvengo, for this opportunity. Allow me to recognize the presence of the Minister of Home Affairs and the Chairperson of the Interministerial Consultative Committee on Border Management, Dr. Leon Schreiber. Of course, the Deputy Commissioner for Corporate Services, Madam Jane Tupana. And of course, recognizing in absentia the Deputy Commissioner for Operations, Major General David Chilembe, retired. All of the Assistant Commissioners here present, Deputy Assistant Commissioners, and of course the entire Border Management community. We'd also like to appreciate the presence of some of the private sector role players as well as general public partners that we work with in as far as border management work is concerned. Of course, members of the media, your presence is highly appreciated. In the rest of South Africa, good morning. In terms of this particular gathering, we just want to start by indicating that it was on Sunday, the 7th of December 2025, when we converged in the same venue here, mainly to present the 2025-2026 festive season operational plan, which was to be implemented from the 10th of December 2025 until the 15th of January 2026. At that time, we did emphasize the need to balance strategic imperatives in the delivery of an effective festive season operations. And those are the need to facilitate and manage the legitimate movement of persons and goods across our ports of entry, whilst ensuring the effective detection as well as the disruption of any kind of illegal activities within the border ecosystem. Once again, we are reconvened today to give an account in terms of the execution, the outcomes, the challenges, and the lessons learned arising from the execution of the operational plan. The plan ran for a period of 36 days, of which 21 of those days were for the exit leg, and of course 15 were for the return leg. At the time, the anticipated risks for the operations informed our proactive planning, as well as guiding our resource deployment and strengthened our mitigation measures. Given the then expectation in terms of the increased travel volumes, we strengthened our capacity at identified priority ports. We extended operating hours, obviously under the signature of the Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Leon Schreiber, and also deployed additional technical capacity to ensure the resilience of our systems in delivering the festive operations. We also want to indicate that the implementation of this festive season operational plan was undertaken in close collaboration with multiple law enforcement as well as regulatory partners, and those include the South African Police Service, the South African Revenue Service, the South African National Defence Force, the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, various intelligence structures, Interpol, the Immigration Inspectorate of the Department of Home Affairs, the Road Traffic Management Corporation, as well as the Prof joints, inclusive of the respective provincial as well as local traffic authorities. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Border Technical Committee and the Interministerial Consultative Committee on Border Management, allow me to present the 2025-2026 Festive Season Operational Report on Border Operations. But for contextual purposes, let me start by re-emphasizing the fact that the BMA operates at 71 ports of entry across the whole country, of which 52 of those are land, 10 are international airports, and 9 are seaports, including the border law enforcement area, which is described as 10 kilometers inland from internationally recognized borderline in terms of the land port, but of course 10 nautical miles seaward in terms of the coastline. Our mandate covers various specialized functions, and those are immigration, port health, environmental, as well as agricultural biosecurity responsibilities, inclusive of access control as well as general border law enforcement. Now, let's start with immigration matters. We want to indicate, as the Minister had started to indicate, that the BMA facilitated the legitimate movement of about 4,902,269 travelers across our 71 ports of entry in this festive period that has just passed. Of this total, about 1,369,775 were South African nationals, while about 3,532,494 were foreign nationals. In facilitating this movement, we processed about 340,876 private vehicles, about 9,072 minibus taxis, and 10,349 buses through our land modality. In terms of the air modality, we processed about 7,787 aircrafts, while about 243 vessels were processed through our sea modality. In this festive season, OR Tambo International Airport remained the busiest port of entry and facilitated the majority of the travelers, totaling about 991,535, followed by Libombo Land Port of Entry to Mozambique, which processed about 755,529 travelers, then followed by Beitbridge Port of Entry to Zimbabwe and to the rest of the continent, having facilitated about 618,562. In this regard, we can observe that Libombo experienced a significant increase of traveler volumes by about 184,398, surpassing Beitbridge to become the second busiest port of entry after OR Tambo International Airport. This increase in terms of the traveler volumes for Libombo in particular can be attributed to what the Mozambicans experienced in the 2024-2025 festive period when they had the post-election violence, which basically deterred the effective movement of travelers at Libombo Port of Entry in the other festive period. Therefore, if we are to do the aggregation, we can indicate that 84% of all of the travelers processed in this particular festive season were facilitated at the top 10 ports of entry, and those are OR Tambo International Airport, Beitbridge Port of Entry, Lebombo, Kofontein, Oshhoek, Cape Town International Airport, Maseru Bridge, Ficksburg Bridge, Caledon-Spoort, as well as Groblersdal Bridge. From that total of 4,902,269,000 travelers, about 4,115,112 were facilitated at these top 10 ports, while the remaining 16% of the travelers were facilitated at the other 61 ports of entry. Now, in terms of the movement of goods, we just want to give a broader snip to indicate that working with our colleagues from the South African Revenue Service, we facilitated about 145,113 trucks for both imports as well as exports in this particular period of 36 days. Of this total, 121,217 were processed for exports, while around 23,896 were processed for imports. In this regard, about 42,618 trucks were facilitated at Lebombo Port of Entry, only for export purposes. In this regard, we want to indicate that the majority of those particular processed trucks were actually transit cargo that were destined to Maputo Harbour for the purposes of going to the rest of the world. We can account for around 7,745 trucks that were facilitated at Beitbridge Port of Entry for import purposes. Now, in dealing with issues of illegal migration as well as other forms of illegality, we want to report that the border guards participated in more than 531 joint law enforcement operations, as the Minister had already indicated, which were mainly relating to roadblocks as well as vehicle checking points, which were actually done within the border law enforcement areas. They further conducted about 10,455 vehicles as well as foot patrols and raided about 8,288 hotspot areas within the border law enforcement areas. Further, the partnership and the deployment of the DCD protected mobility vehicles had a significant operational impact on patrol operations by markedly enhancing our mobility, visibility, but also the response capability in high areas, including in wrecked terrains as well as flooded rivers. The deployment of the Shell A terrain vehicle in the flooded Limpopo River, in particular around Beitbridge Port of Entry, also allowed us to ensure an uninterrupted operations despite the environmental challenges. Then during these festive operations, the border guards detected and intercepted about 26,852 individuals who were attempting to enter South Africa illegally. Of this total, about 22,153 were undocumented. These were effectively travelers having been intercepted were found to be not having any kind of identification. Around 2,353 were undesirables. These were the people that were either found to have overstayed before in South Africa, or they're either found to actually have been having subverted any kind of a legislative framework within our jurisdiction. While 2,346 were considered inadmissible and therefore not allowed to enter the country, and these were individuals either with expired passport or any kind of invalidity around the passport. Maybe the passport was not machine readable. It also included individuals that might have been found with fraudulent visas that could not be affirmed and effectively confirmed to be authentic by the Department of Home Affairs, or actually individuals who came from yellow fever infested countries but did not have the yellow fever certificates as required in law within the context of the prescripts given to us by the Department of Health. During this 2025-2026 festive period, there has been a significant decline, as the Minister had said, in the number of individuals who attempted to enter South Africa illegally compared to the 58,394 that were intercepted in the 2024-2025 festive period. Now, this represents a decline of 46%, And this can be attributed to the deterrence, once again, as the minister said, imposed by the deployment of the drones within the border environment. Of the total of 26,852 as indicated, about 14,828 were Basotho nationals, once again leading as the people that has been intercepted in majority. They were followed by Zimbabweans, where the interception was about 5,370, followed by Mozambicans at the number of around 1,373. In addition, the border guards also arrested about 81 individuals for various offenses. In this instance, we talk about individuals who would have been intercepted trying to exit stolen vehicles out of South Africa, or we talk about individuals who will be in possession of illicit goods such as your firearms, contraband, drugs, or even a range of dangerous goods such as commercial explosives as well as blasting cartridges. These are the things that we intercept in the ports, particularly in our north corridor, attempting to bring ballistic cartridges for the purposes of exploding the cash in transit vehicles, or actually even using them for the purposes of illegal mining. Now, if we are to pause and look at the incremental figures, we can confirm that to date the BMA has managed to intercept more than 530,145 individuals who had been attempting to enter the Republic illegally, and here we talk incremental figure from July of 2022 with the first deployment of the first cohort of the border guards. Further, the border guards intercepted and stopped about 6 vehicles from being smuggled out of the country. These vehicles were handed to the detectives of the South African Police Service for further handling as prescribed within the legislative framework of the country. Therefore, incrementally, once again, we can indicate that the BMA has been able to stop a total of about 356 vehicles from being smuggled out of the country, an incremental figure from July of 2022 to date. With regards to illicit goods, we can indicate that there has been an interception just within this particular period of about 143 cartons of illicit cigarettes, particularly in our north corridor. And of course, this is also inclusive of dagga that has been intercepted around our various ports, but mainly in the eastern corridor with Eswatini, and here we talk about over 100,000 worth of dagga. Now, if we move and reflect on the protection of South Africa from agricultural and environmental biosecurity threats, which is part of our key responsibility, we want to indicate that the BMA biosecurity specialists for both environmental and agricultural specialized functions managed to search over 369,703 pieces of luggage at various ports of entry. As such, they managed to intercept and seize a number of unauthorized consignments consisting of more than 4,000 plants and their products, whether in the form of fruits, your chicken, your dairy products, honey, beef, meat, vegetables, fresh spices, vegetable seeds, turkey meat, flowers, as well as fresh leaves. All these were confiscated and incinerated, effectively meaning they had to be destroyed. This is very much fundamental, as we keep on indicating that when people are destined to South Africa, they are not allowed to bring any of this kind of products, whether it's animal their products or actually it is plants and their products. However, we want to still continue to observe appreciate some of the travelers who actually observe and listened to our warning to ensure that they don't bring any unauthorized plants and their products, as indicated, animals and their products at the port of entry. Despite all these, the BMA wishes to commend travelers who heeded the call to refrain from bringing alien invasive species, foreign pests, and any other kind of diseases, whether within the context of animal or even in the context of plants or even in the context of infectious or communicable diseases within their system. So on that particular basis, we then can be able to now move and reflect on the work that we do in as far as port health is concerned. In this period of 36 days, as indicated, our port health specialists have been able to screen about 1,000,000 361,270 travelers on arrival at our port of entry. You will remember that in terms of protocols as provided for, the screening is for those that are destined into South Africa for the purposes of intercepting individuals that might be bringing unwittingly or maybe wittingly infectious or communicable diseases into the Republic. In addition to the screening, one set of human remains was actually intercepted, prompting the immediate activation of relevant health and forensic protocols. In this period, the inspections detected the majority of Angolan nationals during the departure phase who were attempting to leave the country with fraudulently acquired emergency travel certificates. And this was repeated during the arrival phase, where some individuals attempted to enter South Africa using fraudulent yellow fever certificates. Given the various outbreaks of infectious and communicable diseases across the world, the Port Health team across our entire ecosystem has ensured the intensified proactive public health and security measures to make sure that we do not leave anything to chance. Despite this, this period was marked by increased traveler movement, conveyancer inspections, screening activities, as well as disease surveillance, confirming a substantial rise in traveler volumes across the world. A critical focus of the 2025-2026 operation was the public health screening of travelers arriving from yellow fever infested jurisdiction, as well as other infectious disease endemic regions. Further, 15 travelers were identified as sick on board in one of the aircrafts, enabling immediate medical intervention. About 514 travelers from yellow fever endemic countries were detected and screened, and strengthening early detection and prevention effort. 2 travelers were also detected without valid yellow fever certificates, demonstrating vigilance in preventing potential importation of yellow fever into South Africa. During this period, once again, 167,314 travelers from malaria endemic countries were recorded and screened. And of course, additionally, 213 suspected malaria cases were tested upon arrival, strengthening malaria surveillance effort. 236,844 individuals underwent follow-up screening for various infectious diseases, enhancing early warning capability during the high-risk season, such as this one that we have just come out. So our Port Health team has intensified their actions, successfully confiscating as well as incinerating harmful products such as pesticides, unauthorized mosquito repellents, and other prohibited products such as hair chemicals, including skin lightening creams. Once again, we want to emphasize that these illicit skin lightening creams are very much dangerous, and therefore people must desist from using this kind of creams and ultimately reduce the demand in as far as these products are concerned. Once again, in this past festive season, of serious concern was the rising number of unaccompanied minors who were intercepted around the ports of entry attempting to enter or exit South Africa. For instance, about 53 unaccompanied minors were discovered and recorded at Beitbridge Port of Entry, demonstrating a major increase in undocumented minors, some being as young as 3 years. On the 13th of December, an 11-month-old baby was found abandoned at the Port of Entry. At Libombo Port of Entry, about 15 minors were also intercepted at the mountains attempting to illegally exit South Africa. Of serious concern was the interception of a Mozambican national who attempted to smuggle a South African child to Mozambique. It was later discovered that the child was reported missing in Johannesburg, and the suspect was immediately arrested and the matter was referred to the South African Police Services for further processing. All these cases were referred to the Department of Social Development, and all minors were taken to place of safety in line with international and domestic legislative prescripts. Subsequently, the BMA, together with the Department of Social Development, convened an agent meeting with the Zimbabwean counterpart at the Zimbabwean embassy to address this particular increase. The engagement addressed matters of the movement of undocumented minors at the port of entry, including issues of irregular cross-border movements around issues of illegal migration. At the meeting, the delegates agreed to engage on collective awareness sessions, targeting parents in particular, the seamless referral pathways, and the joint screening of children for their successful uniting or being brought together back to their respective family members. In this regard, the cooperation of the bus companies in avoiding the transportation of undocumented individuals is highly appreciated. And that is why in this particular period, we didn't have any major concern about individuals being moved by buses. As the minister had indicated, the conversation that we had, facilitated by the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, around the issue of the issuance of the cross-border permits, to indicate that if any bus is to be found transporting illegal migrants, particularly minor children, it is indeed going to be having serious consequences. We have seen good cooperation with the bus companies, and that is highly appreciated. We still have to further intensify our engagements with the taxi operators, because even in this instance of these minors, they were mainly being transported through by the taxis. In conclusion, allow me, colleagues, to extend our sincere appreciation to the BMA officials, which include the border guards, the coastal guards, the immigration specialists, port health specialists, including our agricultural and environmental biosecurity experts, who continue to perform their duties diligently amid various challenges and the complexities associated with the border law enforcement responsibility. We also thank the members of the media who accompanied us to the various ports of entry, obviously for helping to shed light on the intricacies of our work and informing South Africans on the border management related matters. A special thank you also goes to our partners who supported us during this 2025-2026 festive period. We want to express our appreciation to the Western Cape government as well as the City of Cape Town. Here we talk about the Premier as well as the Mayor for having given us 50 personnel for deployment at Cape Town International Airport, who had actually been able to assist us for the purposes of taking care of the work that we do from an immigration point of view. And I suppose we fairly know that the BMA operate at 25% capacity, and that is why we had to strive through partnerships. We also want to appreciate the partnership we had with the Gauteng provincial government, who gave us also 80 officials that we deployed at OR Tambo International Airport, who actually assisted us in dealing with issues of immigration matters there. All of this deployment assisted us in making sure that there is a better facilitation of travelers, and we were able to effectively address the complaints regarding to queues. We also want to appreciate the Department of Tourism that has actually assisted us with 160 tourism monitors that were deployed across the various ports of entry, and they effectively assisted us in as far as queue management is concerned in dealing with the high volumes that we had to deal with. Once again, we appreciate the Department of Social Development for also providing social workers to us for deployment across the ports of entry, mainly in assisting us to deal with the vulnerable individuals, including unaccompanied minors, as well as the victims of trafficking. Our heartfelt thanks also goes to the industry partners, and those are explicitly talking about the South African Freight Forwarders Association, the Association of Meat Importers and Exporters, and together with the South African Association of Ship Operators and Agents, for also assisting us in funding some of our operations from a cost recovery perspective, particularly in this particular period. We also acknowledge the assistance we got from the DCD Protected Mobility, Aselsan South Africa, Unipro Protective Wear for assisting us with advanced surveillance mobility as well as protective technologies for this particular period. We also thank Sanlam Asupol for supporting the health and the well-being of the officials in the height of the operations. Additionally, our collaboration with TREC as well as Sanral was instrumental in improving traffic flow as well as reducing congestion, particularly at Libombo Port of Entry. We have been able to deploy effectively and put in the trucks at kilometer 7 at Libombo, and that assisted in decongesting the N4 corridor towards Libombo port of entry. And once again, we are very grateful of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure for assisting us with additional infrastructure for this particular period. And of course, our colleagues from SARS, Home Affairs IT, who assisted us in the provision of ground IT technicians who were assisting us to make sure that our systems are very much up and running during this particular period. The contribution of all these partners was very much instrumental in the smooth implementation of the operations during this particular festive period. Let me then close by reminding everybody and the broader border community that the BMA still has Operation Yidibise number, and that is 080-122-9019, which should be used to report any smuggling-related activities across the borders, including issues of unethical behavior at the port of entry, and also if there is any other issue of concern regarding the border ecosystem. That number is going to be assisting if you are to effectively use it for us to be able to deal with the issues. And of course, lastly, people can also visit the BMA website, which is www.bma.gov.za, to report corruption or any suspicious smuggling activities relating to the border.